On today's Locked On Giants, a report out today that when free agency resumes, whenever that may be, the Giants are not expected to be in on players who are seeking a 9-figure deal, so north of $100 million. However, in that same report, they believe that the Giants will be very active in the more mid-tier market. And so today we're going to look at some of who those options are and what it would cost the Giants and what their payroll would look like depending on who they add. So we'll get into all of the numbers and the players next on today's Locked On Giants.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily San Francisco Giants podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Giants Baseball, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Ben Kaspick, and on this show we provide daily episodes Monday through Friday talking about the San Francisco Giants in a way that's data-driven and rational, but also simple, passionate, and accessible to all. I'm a former contributor for the baseball statistics and analysis websites Beyond the Box Score and Rotographs. I've been podcasting about the Giants since 2015, and I'm a lifelong fan. Thank you for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. We're free and available on all platforms, now including YouTube as well. And for those of you who were looking for an episode yesterday and one did not come out, I apologize. I had a sick day. I can't really apologize for that, I suppose. But anyway, if you're ever wondering where these episodes are, you can check out the show account at LO_SF Giants on Twitter, and I'll put something out if there's not going to be a show. Anyway, without further delay, as I said, there was a report by Kiley McDaniel, an insider for ESPN, former scouting writer, I don't know the exact term, over at Fangraphs, and then he worked for the Atlanta Braves, and now he's an insider for ESPN. And basically in this article, he's talking about how the Giants are a sleeping giant and they have all this money to spend, and that the anticipation is that they will be aggressive with it. But in the same article, he says that his sources indicate that the Giants are not in on players or not interested in players who are going to command 9-figure deals. So that remains to be seen. Sources, I mean, who knows exactly who those sources are and if it's true. I would imagine some of you immediately are going to be typing about how you don't expect the Giants to do that either, and that Farhan Zaidi doesn't spend, and blah, blah, blah. I'll just point out, they did make Bryce Harper a 12-year, $310 million offer in Zaidi's first offseason here, but we shall see. I don't really see Correa as a very likely player for the Giants to sign. I think that the kind of vetting they do of the personality and the cheating stuff, I'm just not sure. I don't know. Very good talent, but I'm just not sure. There are better fits out there. But anyway, let's look at some of the players who might meet this criteria. It's interesting to say the Giants are expected to spend, but they're not expected to spend at the top of the market. So like more of a, I don't want to say quantity over quality, but that's basically what it is. Still some very good players in the mid-tier. I mean, can you really say like $90 million is mid-tier? Maybe. But let's just take a look. Like for me, when I'm looking at starting pitchers, there are only a couple of players left who kind of aren't bargain type signings potentially, or like buy low type signings. I don't even know what I'm trying to say. Like guys who are going to make north of even $20 million. There's only a couple guys, and that's Clayton, Kershaw, and Carlos Rodon. And to me, Kershaw's not signing here. Just like point blank, not signing here. I'm going to say like someone I've been thinking about all offseason is Carlos Rodon. And the predicted contract for Carlos Rodon, there's three different sources I'm looking at here when I'm looking at predicted contracts. ESPN, let's start with them since we're talking about a report by ESPN, has Rodon getting a 3-year, $51 million contract, which is, of course, an average of $17 million per season. Fangraphs predicts 3 years, $45 million, pretty similar guess, and that's, of course, $15 million per season. MLB Trade Rumors predicts that he's going to take a 1-year deal for $25 million to try to rebuild some value after he had a very good but injury-plagued season. I mean, really, he did throw 132 and 2/3 innings, and were they dominant? My goodness. I mean, Carlos Rodon, I'm like circling him in red ink at this point. To me, he makes so much sense, and he's not going to command $100 million. And I seriously doubt that. If we look at these predicted contracts, there's a ton of like risk baked into these predicted contracts. Like if he was able to pitch like he pitched in 2021 with consistency and with health, he would have been the top starting pitcher on the market. And so we're looking at a guy who has the upside of the top starting pitcher on the market, and we're looking at 3 years, $50 million as kind of the peak of these predictions. And so, yeah, I mean, I've talked about how Marcus Stroman doesn't really have the characteristics that I would invest in heavily if I was running a team. Run prevention, attractive, history of run prevention, but projecting forward, I like strikeouts and I like dominance. And Carlos Rodon has that in spades, and he just had a overpowering season. And so he's a guy I'm looking at, and the average kind of AAV of these three sources for the contract is $19 million. So call it $19 million over $19 million per season over 2 or 3 years. And I think that would be a slam dunk signing, and it would put the Giants' payroll at just about $142 million, which would still be $20 million lower than last season. And so they would still be in great shape, and he's definitely a guy to watch. So coming up next, we'll talk about some position players I'm going to add to my kind of free agent spending here for the Giants when we're not talking about $100+ million players. So stay tuned for that. But first, this holiday season, grab the protein bar that tastes like a candy bar, or even better than a candy bar, Built Bar. Filled with so much holiday goodness, rich with decadent flavor, covered in chocolate but amazingly low in calories, sugar, net carbs, and fat, and high in protein. You get the best of both worlds, delicious and healthy. There's also so many flavors you'll have a hard time choosing. Will you go with raspberry or mint brownie, cherry or double chocolate, cookies and cream, or peanut butter brownie? We have ongoing debates among Locked On hosts about our favorite Built Bar flavors. These guys, Built Bar, the folks over at Built Bar are fantastic. They send us Built Bars all the time, and we are super grateful, but man, do we have a hard time coming up with a consensus about our favorite flavor. So right now, you can go to BuiltBar.com and use promo code LOCKED15 to get 15% off your next order. Use promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at BuiltBar.com. All right, Giants fans, it's already been an interesting offseason, and it won't be long, maybe, before pitchers and catchers report. I'm going to give you the inside track on the absolute best fantasy baseball platform in the industry. It's called Fantrax. Fantrax is the most customizable MLB fantasy platform in the industry, offering the greatest fantasy experience for your dynasty, keeper, redraft, and best ball leagues. Create or join a fantasy baseball commissioner league, invite your friends, and dominate your draft this season. It's also the top dynasty fantasy baseball platform in the industry. Go deep with the ultimate keeper and dynasty leagues, create a simple redraft league, or even customizable best ball league with up to 2,000 teams. Among the most trusted names in fantasy sports since '08, Fantrax invites you to sign up today for free. If you do, you'll be entered to win an official MLB signed Fernando Tatis Jr. baseball. Simply go to fantrax.com/lockedon and use the promo code TATIS when you sign up to be eligible to win. Don't miss this opportunity. Sign up today to win an official MLB signed Fernando Tatis Jr. baseball. Simply go to fantrax.com/lockedon and use the promo code Tatis. All right, here we go. We are going to, I was going to say, get into more questions and answers. You can tell I'm a little bit out of it, but we're going to talk about signings the Giants could make because, Kiley and McDaniel is no slouch over at ESPN. These are good, solid reports and interesting dichotomy there to say that they're going to be aggressive spenders, but also not expected to be interested in anyone in the 9-figure range. So are they just going to load up on these mid-tier guys? I don't know. It's really interesting. The Giants offseason, they've kind of filled out much of a solid rotation already. If you add a Carlos Rodon, I think that would be fantastic. Tons of injury risk, which is actually similar to what we saw entering last season. I don't know if it was necessarily injury risk. DeSclafani was coming off an injury-plagued season. Alex Wood had a lot of injury difficulties. And Aaron Sanchez was coming off an injury history. And, but besides that, Kevin Gausman wasn't. And Cueto has had a lot of injuries. So there was a lot of risk for this rotation in 2021. And they showed up and had a healthy year and led the Giants to 107 wins. So if they were to sign Rodon, let's just say he's an injury risk. Wood is an injury risk. Cobb has had a lot of injuries. So there would be a lot of risk and they would need to continue to add starters, but I would still really like that rotation. If you've got Webb and Rodon is a lefty. Let me just talk about the numbers for a second. He had a strikeout rate of about 35%. League average is like 23%-ish. So much higher than the league average. Strikeouts per 9, 12.5 strikeouts per 9 innings for Rodon. Walk rate was a career best at 6.7%. He just had a dominant season. 2.37 ERA in the American League. 2.65 fielding independent pitching. 2.68 expected ERA, about 5 Fangraphs wins above replacement in just 132 and 2/3 innings. The issue is he's had arm injuries, and I don't think he even pitched in the postseason because he was having some difficulties with that left arm. And so, yeah, that's a huge red flag, but also the upside is tremendous. So that's the type of move the Giants have made is you buy kind of low-ish and there's the opportunity for just massive surplus value. So we'll see. And the offseason is on pause. But anyway, thanks again, though, for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. We're free and available on all platforms. I'm rambling a little bit today, but let's continue the exercise. We've signed Rodon at $19 million a year. Call it 2 or 3 years, whatever. I would like 3. Personally, 2 is more team friendly, but who knows? Okay, so anyway, $19 million per year. We're only at $142 million. So let's try to fill that need for a right-handed outfielder with good at-bat quality and power. A specific quote from Farhan Zaidi. He wasn't necessarily saying it has to be an outfielder, but he said they'd be in that market, and that was what they were looking for from an offensive player. And outfield makes more sense than infield. But there's not a lot of guys in that range when we're not talking about $100+ million. There's no $100+ million outfielders left unless somebody goes crazy with Nick Castellanos. He's probably the main guy. He does chase a lot, so I'm not sure that is something that they want. But he makes a lot of contact also and also hits for a ton of power. Mostly power, and can hit for average too. Nick Castellanos would cost about $20 million per season, according to these estimates, averaging these sources. One source does have him making over $100 million, and that's MLB Trade Rumors. But ESPN and Fangraphs both have him getting 3 years around $55-60 million. So that would be more in line with where the Giants might be very interested. If we're talking 5 years, $115 million, I'm just not sure he's worth it given that he's a bad defensive player. He's just a bad defensive player, and that hurts his value a lot. You have to be really good, really, really good in other areas to be worth $115 million if you basically can't play defense. So I'm kind of shifting my attention to Seiya Suzuki. I know a lot of people have been in on Suzuki. I've never seen the guy play except highlight videos, and I haven't seen anybody attempt to really break down what the projections would be for him in the United States. He has been posted. His 30-day posting window is on hold with the lockout and will resume whenever we resume the off season. So about only a week or so has passed in that period. So there will be about 3 weeks once the off season gets back going that he could sign. And the projected contract, the average annual value, the average annual value is $11 million. And so to me, that's potentially the type of deal, because there's risk, right? Teams don't necessarily know what they're going to get, but that kind of falls more in line with what Kiley McDaniel was saying with more mid-tier guys. But again, like Rodon, I think there's upside because this guy was an absolute monster in Japan. And so if we sign Seiya Suzuki for $11 million, say over 4 or 5 years, that's the kind of prediction, around $50 million, around $11 million per year for 5 years, you get it. Then even with Rodon and Suzuki, that we're at just $153 million from a payroll perspective. So we're still like $10 million away from where we were last year. And I say we, I'm not, I'm talking because we're building the team right now. But so they would still have a ton of room to add just to get, not a ton, 10 million more to add to get to last year. And then the luxury tax has been roughly $200 million. And it's not a hard cap. It's just you start getting taxed more once you surpass that level. And they're still $50 million away from that. And so they could absolutely go out there and do pretty much whatever they wanted. And so we've signed Rodon. We've signed Seiya Suzuki to be, I don't know if he can play center. I've heard that he's a right fielder. So does that slide Yastrzemski into center field in a platoon with maybe Austin Slater? And in left field, you've got your Darren Ruff and Lamont Wade Jr. platoon, and is Seiya Suzuki an everyday player? I don't know. I'm sure they could find kind of a left-handed. Duggar could platoon if needed. That actually makes a lot of sense. So you could have Yaz and Slater in center. You could have Duggar available to kind of platoon a little bit with Suzuki if he doesn't earn everyday playing time. Then you've got your Wade Jr. and Ruff in left. I actually kind of quite like that. And so we'll go with that, and then we'll go coming up next, we'll talk about the other additions I'm making here with our payroll sitting at just $153 million. I want to kind of round out this team with a couple more, 1 or 2 more mid-tier guys according to these projected numbers. But first, BetOnline has you covered all season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before as football season continues the march to the playoffs. BetOnline remains your number one spot for all the sports action this season. Head to our new updated desktop or mobile website to sign up today and receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Just use our promo code LOCKEDON to receive your bonus. From basketball, football, NHL, boxing, and UFC, right to your favorite Vegas casino games, don't wait to take advantage of all the amazing offers available for the 2021 season. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to bet on all your favorite sports. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, here we go. We're going to round out this team that we're building. We've signed Carlos Rodon. We've signed Seiya Suzuki. I think a lot of fans out there listening right now would agree that they would be thrilled if the Giants made these 2 signings, bringing the total kind of commitment for 2022 up to an additional $30 million, and the Giants standing at just $153 million in payroll with these additions. So I think fans would be excited, the team would be excited, the team would be looking pretty good. I mean, our rotation would be Webb, Rodon, DeSclafani, Wood, and Cobb. There's just no weakness there. There's injury risk and, 3, 4, 5. I mean, you can kind of flip flop any of those guys. To me, like Wood, Cobb, and DeSclafani are all kind of mid tier guys. And so you've got mid tier guys, even at your 4 and 5, is looking pretty good. And they have said they're not trying to build a team for 5 starters. They're trying to build a team for 162 starts. And that's kind of an interesting way of looking at it. And actually, it makes you think about guys with injury concerns and thinking about, okay, how many starts could a Carlos Rodon give us? And so you're adding up that number and you're adding up everybody's projected starts. And that's actually kind of interesting. And maybe you go to a 6-man rotation, something I mentioned a couple days ago, put Tyler Beede in there, and everybody with their injury concerns is getting a little more rest. And so it's something to keep an eye on and something we won't know the answer to until the offseason is finished. But guys with injury risk, I think, are a good fit for the Giants because they think about things a little bit differently. So anyway, let's continue to build our team. Now I'm looking at just kind of other position players. I quite like potentially Trevor Story. I mean, he's a good player, but again, I'm not sure he fits exactly what they're looking for. There's a lot of chase with Trevor Story, much like with Nick Castellanos. There's really intriguing power, and with Story, there's good speed. He's had some issues throwing. I do wonder if he could be a target as an outfielder for the Giants. The projected contracts, I mean, I'm just not sure exactly what Trevor Story is going to end up getting. I think there's a big range. There's the possibility he accepts a short-term deal to try to rebuild some value. He had a kind of down year for the Rockies entering his free agent year, unfortunately for him. However, all the predictions for contracts come in at 5 or 6 years at a little over $20 million per year. So that would take him out of that, no 9-figure deals for the Giants range. But he's a guy who his value could kind of fall down to earth, and maybe the Giants would pounce under those circumstances. There's also Michael Conforto as an outfielder who I like quite a bit. And the predicted contract for Michael Conforto is different sources have him taking different amounts. Fangraphs had him accepting the qualifying offer. MLB Trade Rumors thinks a 1-year deal to rebuild value at $20 million per year. 1 year, $20 million, and ESPN thinks 3 years, $51 million. That puts him right in line with that mid-tier that we're talking about, and I think that could be a good value, but he is a left-handed hitter. That's kind of the one thing that doesn't necessarily line up as the strongest fit. Although, disciplined hitter, has had a history of being above average in the outfield, although that seems to have fallen off a little bit, and just a good player, and that's a pretty reasonable predicted contract. So there's also Kyle Schwarber, who comes in at a similar kind of prediction in the 3 or 4 year, $15 million range. Another guy like Castellanos, who can't really play defense and doesn't really have a defensive home, but an impact bat. And I think there's a little more plate discipline with Schwarber, but again, he's left-handed, Castellanos is right-handed, so I'm not entirely sure which one would be a better fit, but both could be in that financial fit according to what McDaniel of ESPN was saying. So lastly is Kris Bryant, and he just remains an intriguing guy to me, and I'm sure to a lot of Giants fans. And the predicted contracts have a huge range, and we talked about this when these predictions came out. ESPN is the low predictor at 5 years, $90 million total, and I've said time and time again, if that's the price for Bryant, I think that the Giants should and will be interested, very interested. However, MLB Trade Rumors has 6 years, $160 million, and Fangraphs says 8 years, $200 million. I would just, at this point, be really, really surprised if that's what Kris Bryant gets. I do just want to point out quickly that Fangraphs has had the worst predictions in terms of, I've been keeping track of what guys actually signed for versus what was predicted. it was apparent right away when they came out that Fangraphs had the worst predictions. MLB Trade Rumors has been the best by a lot, and ESPN is second. So just take that for whatever it's worth. Anyway, that is all the time we have for today. Coming up for the rest of the week, we're going to be doing a crossover at some point with Millard Thomas from Locked On D-Backs, just discussing the offseason in general. And also I want to do a mailbag, so look out for that in the next couple days. Once again, my name is Ben Kaspick. You can follow me on Twitter at Ben Kaspick, Kaspick. Thanks for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. Now make your second listen Locked On Bets, hosted by your boy Q with expert analysis and insight from Lee Sterling. It's free and available on all platforms. Anyway, really hope you enjoyed today's show. Thanks again for listening. You are now Locked On Giants.